I also wanted to mention that this webinar is a registered IIBA webinar. So those of you who are business analysts as part of the audience, if you're listening live and you're a business analyst, uh, the time you're spending on this webinar qualifies for your professional development credits with the IIBA, and that's towards your business analysis certification. And so today we're going to be seeing a project, a typical software project from start to finish. And we would focus on the role of the business analyst, but we would also call out or highlight the role of other professionals or stakeholders on a typical software implementation project. This webinar is sponsored by Lacroix Institute of Technology and Digital Transformation Center. Lacroix Institute of Technology is a private training institution in Canada specializing in training individuals or employees. And Digital Transformation Center is a technology advisory company in Canada specializing in helping small and mid-sized companies to select and implement software. So a lot of the examples we would be sharing today comes from either experience from Digital Transformation Center or from Lacroix Institute of Technology. About the speaker, as a practicing business analyst and senior IT project manager, I've led so many software implementation projects across industries, as well as business improvement projects over the last 15 years. My academic background includes an MBA and a doctorate in business administration, where I focused on technology strategy. And during my doctoral research, I noticed that a lot of software projects fail due to common pitfalls that could always be avoided. Now, the fact that software projects fail is not a new thing. If you follow the news, you would see all sorts of reports that say that software implementation projects usually fail at about 70%, sometimes more, for almost the same reasons. And so, given that realization, I thought about how do I solve the problem? How do we bridge the gap? And so we came up with this UDEL 360 framework, which is the framework that we would go through as we implement the hypothetical software today. And that framework is used, it's a practical tool that helps companies pretty much to avoid failures when it comes to software implementation projects. And failures will include things like you've gone over budget, maybe the timeline is too extended, maybe the requirements of the company don't match the functionalities of the software, and the list goes on. I'm very passionate about helping individuals to pursue careers in technology. And to date, I've helped hundreds of people in achieving their careers, be they employees or individuals. And my area of expertise is in technology strategy, business transformation, software selection, technology integration, and training. So today we're going to be on 6 main topics. There are so many subtopics, but just for an easy understanding, we would look at business analysis as a profession and the business analyst as the professional. We would now dive into the role of that professional, mindful of the profession, the role of that professional in project planning and initiation, the role of that BA professional in software development, in software evaluation and testing, in rolling out the software, and even after the project. So we would be proceeding from that lens. So to topic number one, an overview of business analysis and the business analyst. We will focus now on the business analyst. Oh, sorry, business analysis, the profession, not the analyst. So according to IIBA, IIBA is the flagship, the go-to resource for everything that has to do with business analysis. And the definition of business analysis is that it's the practice of facilitating change. Every word mentioned is a key word, so I would like us to pay attention to those words. So a business analysis is the practice of facilitating change in a certain context within an organization by defining needs and recommending solutions that bring value to stakeholders. So the aim of business analysis is to provide a company with the means. How do they formulate needs and a rationale for change? Why do we need to change? And to design and describe solutions. What's going to be that solution that would address the need? And finally, delivery of value. What makes sense to the stakeholders? And so business analysis adds value through observed results like improved efficiency, better decision making, and improved communication. Typically, once business analysis is practiced, that's what you get as a result. So business analysis is really critical for companies because it helps them, of course, achieve those value-added results I just mentioned. And so when you're understanding a company's context and all the different players involved, the stakeholders, the business analyst can provide recommendations and solutions that would improve the effectiveness and efficiency of the company. In business analysis, we have some core concepts, and these concepts are very well defined and elaborated in what we call the BABOK, the Business Analysis Body of Knowledge. If you're not an IIBA member, or if you don't have an IIBA certification, the terms I'm using might be a bit foreign, but I'll keep it simple given that we have a diverse audience, both live and those who will be listening after. So remember the definition I gave about business analysis. So those are the key terms shown. So everything we see on the screen is part of those key terminologies. So in business analysis, it's about change, the act of transforming, the act of transformation in reaction to a need. So there's a need and we're going to engage in change. Now, the word need is also a key concept in business analysis, because if there's no need, then there's going to be no change. So a need is a problem or an opportunity that needs to be addressed. Then there's a concept of solution. A solution is what solves a problem, a specific way of satisfying one or more needs within a certain context. And they are using the word context, which also is a key concept. And all of this has to do with stakeholders. Stakeholders are those individuals or groups who have a relationship, a stake in the solution. They would either benefit or lose. Let's say mostly the benefit, but they have a relationship with the change and the need and the solution. And value is the worth or the importance of what's being provided as a solution to the stakeholder. And something can be valuable in one context to the same stakeholder and not valuable to the same stakeholder in another context. So context is very important. And context is what? Context is all of those attitudes, behaviors, beliefs, competitors, cultures, demographics, all of those things, languages, weather, anything that makes a situation unique, that makes a situation particular, forms the context. for that situation. These are very important concepts to know when we're trying to successfully implement ERP systems or software systems in general. Now, let's talk about the business analyst, the professional. The business analyst is not the one who has the title business analyst. The business analyst is the one who performs business analysis tasks. So we're going to list a few business analysis tasks, but it's not about your title. It's about the activities that you do. Somebody could have the title customer service, but then in your day-to-day, you still perform the task of a business analyst or of business analysis. Just like somebody could have the title accountant or lawyer or nurse or so many different diverse professions, but they perform business analysis. So it's not about the role. So the goal of a business analyst is to understand what the problems are, those problems that we've mentioned within a certain context, analyze the needs and solutions, looking for options, devising strategies, driving change. A business analyst is a change maker, an agent of change, and facilitating stakeholder collaboration. So I like to say a business analyst is an agent of change and is supposed to be a diplomat. Is also supposed to be a strategist, is supposed to be an advisor, and an architect, all in one. These are other roles that perform business analysis tasks, but as you can see, they don't have the title business analyst. They do have similarities though. Business architects, business systems analysts, data analysts, enterprise analysts, and so on. And this is not an exhaustive list because depending on the company you work for, some companies call the role something different. What's important is not the title, is your function. What is it that you do? How do you add value to the project? So let's get into the goal for today's webinar. Today's goal is really a walkthrough of an ERP implementation project using the UDEL 360 approach. So what is UDEL 360? The Unified Digital Enablement Lifecycle in full helps companies to figure out what solutions they need. Then it looks at the current situation of the company. Where is it now? It looks at the future situation. Where would the company like to be? And then the gaps and the bridge. What can we do to make the changes happen? So this framework serves all of those purposes at once. And if you break down each of the words, U, D, E, L, U stands for understand the current situation. Design would be the D. You design a future situation once you've understood where you currently are. You experiment. Once you have a solution in mind, you test it out, you try to see if it fits, and you launch it. You share it with other people. You make sure it's used to derive its full potential. As simple as that. So let's get into the details of each of these steps. And this is pretty much how the software implementation project would begin. So when we talk of software, what I mean is enterprise systems. So out there in the market, you have, consumer systems like the tools that you have on your cell phone or on your private computer, and you have enterprise systems. Enterprise systems are the tools that or the software that you use in a company setting, in a work setting. They are mostly used by so many of your colleagues, either at the same time or in sequence. And examples of such systems, there are thousands of, or even not millions of different types of enterprise systems. But the most common ones are ERP systems, so enterprise resource planning. These are very, very critical masterpiece, central piece systems used across companies. You would most likely have used one if uh, if you've been an employee in many of the large or the mid-sized companies. And increasingly, small companies are starting to implement ERP systems as well. Then you have specialist systems, but there are also enterprise systems like CRMs, customer relationship management systems, typically used by sales and customer service and field service teams. So when you get that phone call from somebody asking you to buy something, they usually document your interactions and your call in a system. They usually have an account for you when you go to the bank and you open up an account, or you go to a store to buy something, or when your internet service provider comes and delivers a service, provides a service like gives you internet or repairs something. They usually enter in the information or the interaction, the work they've done in a customer relationship management system or a field service system. Then you have the human resource information system. That's where all of your employee data is stored, like your name, your address, your family situation, your degrees, everything that has to do with the employee. Electronic document management systems, that's where you store documents. They look like your Google Drives, your OneDrives, and all of that. You pretty much have versions, electronic versions of your documents in those systems, but they are much more than that. You also have transport management systems, mostly used by logistics teams. And these are very key systems for transport companies. They have fleet, truck fleet, a huge, load of trucks. They need to track drivers and the routes. They need to plan optimal positions and things like that. Then you have vendor management systems used by companies that do a lot of procurement, a lot of buying. Uh, of course, most companies buy, if not every company buys, because you have to buy something in order to transform it and sell. And so in some companies, the need for a vendor management system is so advanced, it's so strong, and you have very advanced systems that go right down to even sourcing vendors and pricing and environmental concerns with the supply chain management. All of those things are usually managed by vendor management systems. And so that's just a general overview, letting you know what's out there. That's by no stretch an exhaustive list. Uh, but then, of these enterprise systems, today, let's pick one. Let's pick the most common one, the ERP system. And that's what we're going to be implementing. So the focus is on an ERP system. And as I mentioned, an enterprise resource planning system is a type of integrated, that's a keyword, integrated business management software that's designed to automate, streamline business processes across the organization. So you would see down the line that there are some problems when a lot of problems are caused when we don't have integration, when we don't have automation and streamlining. Some of the functionalities of an ERP system include human resources. You could see on the list that we have separate systems for human resources, for supply chain, purchasing, and sales. The beauty with ERP systems is that in one system, you have all of that. Now, you would imagine that those functionalities are more generic. So depending on the industry, a recruitment firm, for example, would need a human resource information system because their business model is really centered around recruitment. A transport company, like I mentioned, would need a transport management software because their business model is centered around managing the fleet and so on and so forth. But a regular manufacturing company and any other, you know, mainstream everyday kind of business would need an ERP system that has all of the functionality. And so these are the main, some people call them modules. If you go into an actual ERP system, you would see that you have these modules somewhere within the same system. But modern systems come with applications, so you don't really have, you know, tabs in the system like an Excel tab where you have finance here, HR here, sales. You mostly have a bunch of applications, one application for finance, one for sales, one for purchasing, just the same like you have on your cell phone. When you open up your cell phone, you most likely have a bunch of applications that serve very specific purposes, but they are all within the system, which is either Android or iOS. So it's the same kind of, you know, thinking that's being applied to enterprise systems. So ERP systems especially are very beneficial to companies because, of course, they improve efficiency. You have better data management. Uh, you're really able to improve customer service because a lot of things happen quickly, and uh, the automation is also amazing. Financial management is also great with ERP systems. You're really able to account for your costs and your expenses. You have improved supply chain management because you have better relationships with your vendors. You have better collaboration with your employees. So it's really a very sought after system. A lot of companies right now are implementing ERP systems, and the trend doesn't seem like it would slow down anytime soon. So let's look at examples of ERP systems. On the screen, you have multi-purpose ERP systems that could suit a large swath of, you know, companies and various industries, be it defense, healthcare, a bunch of manufacturing, and a bunch of industries. If it you have in this group, this is by no stretch an exhaustive list, I should mention. This is like a drop in the ocean. There's a lot more out there in terms of ERP systems, and that's one of the pitfalls that companies fall into. The fact that each of these systems are very similar, but they're also different. And you need to know which one to recommend. And that's why one of my areas of expertise is in weeding out the different systems for different companies. And so within on this list, you have different levels. Some ERP systems here are very, very complex, very robust, and used by multinational companies. For example, this one, the Microsoft Finance and Operations, is not called that anymore, but it used to be called AX, now F&O. This is mostly used by companies that have multiple locations across countries, and the same for SAP, S4HANA, Oracle as well. You have mid-tier ERP systems like this one. It's used mostly by, you know, mid-sized companies, but very large mid-sized companies with thousands of employees and very complex manufacturing transactions. NetSuite, Sage as well, Epicor. These are all good systems. Then you have the ones that are used by mostly small and smaller mid-sized companies like Zoho, Odoo, and yeah. So this is the list of well-known multi-purpose ERP systems. You also have industry-specific ERP systems, such as those in manufacturing. Not that they cannot use the multi-purpose systems, uh, but it affects your software implementation. So if you're in a very specialized industry, for example, if you manufacture luxury luxury furniture, and you need certain components. For example, in some ERP systems, you need to have an engineering component because an engineer has to design the furniture in a way that uses high skills, and the ERP system needs to have that kind of capability. In that case, you're better off selecting an industry specific software that would already have it or that would be less cumbersome developing as opposed to a multi-purpose software. But those decisions are made typically with the help of a business analyst very early on in the project. You have other industry specific systems like those used by construction industry companies. In the food and beverage industry, you also have very specific systems that cater to the needs. Just Food, for example, this system, Just Food, for example, is a variant of the previous system we showed here of this one, Microsoft Business Central. They have the exact same engine, they have the exact same basic functionalities, but you would not know if you have not actually specialized in that. And so one of the big differences is that Just Food would cater to food related companies that have variable weight. Variable weight will be I catch a fish and the fish has a certain weight when I catch it, but when I take it to the warehouse, the weight is different. Why? Because it lost water, it lost fluids, so it becomes lean and it weighs less than when it came out of water. That loss has to be captured because that loss affects the pricing of the fish and it affects a lot of things down the line. So if you select an ERP system that doesn't have catch weight functionality, for example, you would have problems because somebody would have to go back in the system and make sure that it captures some of those core functionalities. So that's just one example of an industry-specific system that caters to specific needs. In printing, you have Avanti Slingshot, which is an example, but you also have others. Now, the goal here is not to really focus on ERP selections. The goal is to implement an actual ERP. So that's what we're going to do. Now, in order for it to be interesting, in order for it to have, something that you can remember, let's go with a case study. So we made up this company. Hopefully it exists one day, but for now it doesn't, to my knowledge, it doesn't exist. It's a hypothetical company, Pinecrest Furnishings Incorporated. So we're going to assume that each of us is a business analyst working for Pinecrest Furnishings, and we've been assigned to an ERP project. We don't yet know what the ERP system is, although we would find out down the line. And the goal will be for us to perform our job as a business analyst across or throughout the project from start to finish. So let's use the remaining 30 minutes to zip through that. Now, I want to take us back to those core business analysis concepts. Those are like the basics of business analysis. You cannot do without those concepts. So they are very important to remember as we proceed. So Pinecrest is a furniture manufacturing company based in Canada. And it has decided to start or to embark on a very significant operational transformation. Mind you, ERP projects are usually very, very significant for companies. Those are mostly the most important projects that business analysts will be assigned to, besides crafting strategy. And they usually entail a lot of change. And so they are pretty important projects. And so the catalyst for this change at Pinecrest is the decision to implement a modern ERP system. That's what, started the whole need for change. And this system hopefully would address limitations of the current systems that they have as well as the current business processes. So for many years, Pinecrest has been using a collection of disparate systems across its various departments. So at Pinecrest, the accounting operates on one software, sales has another one, its warehouse management uses another one. And you would imagine that these systems don't communicate. They don't have any link between each other. If at all, it's very minimal. So this lack of interconnectivity between systems has resulted in significant challenges for the company, for Pinecrest, such as inaccurate data. When the salesperson says the price is $50, or in the case of Pinecrest, they sell furniture. If the salesperson says, well, this price is the sofa is $1,000, maybe it's going to be recorded as $1,000 in the sales system, but the accounting system doesn't probably know that the salesperson sold at $1,000, whereas in the accounting system, the price shows that it's supposed to be $1,300 to account for inflation. And so given that they have different systems, each person has their own type of data. So you would imagine that this would be a ripe candidate for problems, because if you've sold something at 1,000, a sofa, and I'm recording 1,300, and then we do, the balances. Of course, it has so many implications on the amount of profits we're making, whether or not we're even making profits. That's an open question. On taxes and so many other things down the road. So the shortcomings of the way that Pinecrest is currently set up have severely impacted the company's ability to provide excellent customer service. So like the example I gave you, if the salesperson is saying one thing and the back office, the warehouse people are saying another thing, let's say the salesperson sold at 1,000 and the warehouse has inventory showing that the cost of the bare cost of that sofa after having been produced or manufactured is $1,400, and accounting has it at $1,300. You would imagine that it's going to cause problems, because when it's going to be time for delivery, the customer is not going to agree, because they're going to have a different price on the delivery slip compared to what the salesperson provided by email. And so those discrepancies would cause problems, customer service, it would cause returns, and the other problems that could be caused by having different systems. They might ship the wrong product. The sales, even if the prices were correct across the board, the salesperson might say, send a blue sofa, and because they have different systems, somebody might pick up the wrong blue. And so it causes problems, delays, returns, and all of those things. So with data spread across multiple platforms, obtaining a comprehensive view of customer interactions or solving customer issues promptly has become a problem at Pinecrest. Moreover, inefficiency of all of their business processes has made these problems even the more difficult. And so Pinecrest is probably in a lot of trouble, and they need to solve the problem before competition catches up with them. And so the key words here are change. There's some change that's needed within a certain context. I've just described the context with all those interactions, and there's definitely a need that has been expressed directly or indirectly, but by the way that Pinecrest does its business, there's definitely an express need for change. Now let's talk about the next set of key terminologies within the context of Pinecrest: the stakeholders, the solution, and the value. So to address all of these challenges, Pinecrest has decided to implement an ERP system. It's final. They've made that decision. The goal is to create a unified platform where all the data can be stored and accessed. That's what they imagine. That's what they want. And all of that data will be updated in real time. So when sales enters something, accounting has it, warehouse has it, the field delivery people have it, everybody has access to the same information at the same time. By integrating different system operations into a single system, Pinecrest aims, the goal for Pinecrest here is to streamline its processes, cut down costs, because when sales does something and somebody in the warehouse has to correct what the salesperson has done. For example, the salesperson sells you a sofa, and then the sofa is delivered by somebody from the warehouse with a truck. The truck uses fuel, the driver is paid, and all of that, and it gets to your home address somewhere in the world, and you decide that that's not what you ordered, that's not the right color, and you call customer service, somebody has to pick up. That person's salary is paid, it's using resources. Now, you have your request has to be processed, so you have to return that sofa at the cost, at the expense of the company, of Pinecrest, and it has to get back to the warehouse and be put back into inventory. That inventory has a value. So once it goes back into inventory, if it stays there at some point, it depreciates. And so Pinecrest has to resell it. All of those costs need to be addressed by the ERP project. So in the coming months, what Pinecrest needs to do is that it's going to embark on a transformative journey. It's going to change. It's going to leave behind those outdated systems, those siloed systems, and move towards a more integrated, efficient, and customer-friendly business model. Now, what you see on the screen is the exact scenario I see in a lot of companies. This is how a lot of companies look like. And if you think very well about your own company, if you're not using a modern system, your company most likely looks like this. You can see people chilling out, well, not really, but then, you have different silos. Everybody's in their own bucket. There's no collaboration. You don't know what's happening elsewhere, and data doesn't flow. They typically have a bunch of different systems, and it's not that the systems are not modern. It's just that the systems don't communicate with each other. So these are not by any stretch the complete list of systems that companies typically use, but these are a lot of the popular ones. Now, the goal is to move from, you see, a more, siloed environment to a more, unified environment. So that's the ultimate goal here. So with a more unified environment, you can see them holding hands as opposed to the previous scenario where there was more of competition and lack of communication, lack of collaboration. Now they're holding hands. It's all kumbaya. All they need to do now is dance. But this is the future environment that Pinecrest is envisioning. A future environment where the ERP system would be the main source of truth for the company. So this is the middle ground. This is where you typically find the ERP. But the ERP is not very effective by itself. The ERP system communicates with other systems. And so you have all these surrounding systems that would ultimately be implemented by Pinecrest, but not in one shot. These are programs and systems that might take so many years, even not decades, to implement, or maybe they may never have the chance to implement because technology evolves so fast. But the good thing is that they would have a core system from where, like a springboard, from where they could, implement the other systems. And the key word here is unified, really. Now let's dive into topic 2, and from here on, it's going to be pretty fast. So, mindful of everything we've seen, what's the role of the business analyst in project planning and initiation? So given that we're going to be implementing an ERP system, we don't yet know which one at Pinecrest. Let's go back and talk about UDEL. So we're going to be using UDEL to implement an ERP system. Now, those who are vigilant will see that we've mentioned the ERP system. It's called Harmony ERP. Now, Harmony is not an actual ERP system. It's a hypothetical ERP system, but let's implement it anyways. So UDEL 360 stands for Understand, Design, Experiment, and Launch. And this framework is cyclical. So each previous stage feeds into the next stage, and it's really very interesting because within this stage you have so many iterations. So there's a lot of changes and questioning, and let's go back to the drawing board happening here. And okay, we're finished here, then we hand over here, but then you could also hand over back here. So there's a lot of iterations, but it's progressing slowly. You can see how I'm moving in a 360-degree fashion. That is the merger between waterfall and agile. So those who are familiar with project management methodologies, you typically have agile, which is what I'm showing here, the iterations and the feedback and changes and all of that. And the waterfall. Waterfall would be we plan everything at the start. We don't change anything right to the end. But in real life, it doesn't really happen that way. And so the beauty with UDEL is that it's a merger of both worlds. So you can have a strong plan from the start, but you also have a way to adjust as you go. Now, the first stage of your implementation is really the strategic stage. This is where the project is really very early, and the business analyst goal here is to really understand what Pinecrest is currently doing, what the situation looks like as of today. So that's really the main objective of the business analyst at this stage. Now, the business analyst doesn't work alone, so there are other collaborators here. But then the business analyst will try to understand the current business processes. So how do we make money? How do we sell? How do we buy? How do we transform raw materials into furniture? That's what the business analyst will be trying to understand by observation, by documenting, by drawing process maps, and a bunch of other techniques, by interviewing people, by attending meetings, doing workshops, brainstorm sessions, mind map sessions, and you can name it. So this is what happens at the very start of the project. You seek to understand the current situation. And you're not just understanding what happens internally, you're also trying to understand how your internal dynamics, it correlates with your external dynamics, because you have to think about your suppliers. You're trying to change an ERP system, you have suppliers who have been paid in a certain way, and when you're changing your system, they might be affected. So what effect does this change have on them? You have to understand dynamics such as laws. Are there laws that we need to consider while we're implementing the system? For example, here in Quebec and in Canada, quite frankly, there's a huge push from the government now to be more mindful of data security and privacy. And so companies that would be implementing systems henceforth must have a very, very strong look at data privacy and security. So all of those components come from external factors. That's from government. And so the business analyst has to be on the lookout for things like that. What are the changes to legislation? What systems exist out there, aside from looking inward? So you look inward and you look outward. So at this stage, it's really early on. Typically, the business analyst will be involved in several different activities. And this, on the screen, we have just a sample of the most prominent activities that the business analyst will be involved in. Understanding the need for change. The first question you need to ask is, why do we need to change? That's a very important question, because that forms the basis for different things down the road. Like, okay, how do we know that we've succeeded? How do you measure success? And how do we know we're making progress? It stems from, why do we need to change? Are we ready? We need to do a readiness assessment. Sometimes companies involve themselves in projects whereas they're not ready. If you're not ready, you're going to have problems. You need to have money, you need to have people, your mindset needs to be ready for change. Change is not easy. And you would imagine from what we're explaining that there's going to be a lot of change for these companies. And so they need to be ready. And it's the job of the business analyst to not to own the determination of readiness, but to participate in determining whether the company is ready, including making sure that they have resources such as the people. There needs to be a project team, a small project team internally. There needs to be the budget. There needs to be stakeholder buy-in. If everybody doesn't want to change and only the business analyst wants to change, it's obviously not going to work. As well as identifying areas that will be affected by the change. That's what the business analyst does. Documenting business processes, understanding, well, that's a repetition. I apologize for that. Competitive positioning. That's what I was explaining about, looking outward as well. What are your competitors doing? What kind of systems are they implementing? Is it working out for them? Have they failed? Facilitating discussions. The business analyst is the facilitator. You would be organizing a bunch of meetings. You would have competing, ideas, and your role is to facilitate, is to pacify. You're the diplomat. Conducting situation analysis to determine exactly where are we, what do we have, what beast are we fighting. So in the understand stage, that's what the business analyst does. And let's assume that now we have a good understanding of where we are at Pinecrest. We know exactly what the problems are. We've documented the business processes. Now, let's try to put it within the context of the future. So in the next stage, we're going to develop the system. So we're going to envision and plan the ideal future state. So in this optimal future state, this is where the major gaps that we identified. Remember, when the business analyst is going through the business processes, you're going to see a lot of gaps, for example, somebody comes to work at 8 a.m. and it takes them 6 hours to send a sales quote. And you as the business analyst might ask them, without being judgmental, you might ask them, why does it take you 6 hours to send out the business quote? And you might hear answers like, well, it takes me 6 hours because I need to go into 5 different systems and speak with 15 different people in order for me to have the information I need to send it out. So there is an opportunity for you to improve the process. Why does this person need to speak with 15 people? Is that something that could be in one place? And can we reduce that time from 6 hours even to 1 hour? That would be a big win. And so that's the mindset of the business analyst. And so let's assume that you've already done all of that. You've documented those processes and the gaps. You've documented the business needs, and the needs have been approved as requirements. And you now have a very clear picture of where you stand. Now, the next thing that you need to do is you need to select a software. You need to say, okay, what is going to satisfy the needs that I've documented? Many companies go through systems and they make the mistake of selecting systems before determining the need. So I'll leave you with this example. Imagine that you want to buy a TV set. You have a TV set which is a 36-inch TV. You go to the store and you decide to buy a 65-inch TV. But then your car is a Nissan Leaf, or it's a very small car. It's a smart car, tiny. You bring your 36-inch TV out of the tiny car and it works well. But then you want to put your 65-inch TV into your tiny car and it doesn't fit. Now you need to adjust. You need to either return the TV or you lose the money. Now that's the same with ERP systems. when you select the system before you think about the requirements, you end up having problems because you have to adjust backwards. So in order for your projects to succeed, you document your requirement. What do I need? Then you select the tool to satisfy your requirements after the fact. And so those are some of the things that the business analyst will be doing as part of the design stage. And here, this is where the software would be selected. Like I mentioned, the vendor, the person selling the software will be selected. Those are key components as well. You would also have the software developed. So when you buy like your cell phone, it's bare, it's empty, there's nothing in it. You have to manually go and install the applications that you need and customize it, put the colors that you like and all of that. That's the same thing that happens with systems. So when you buy it from the vendor, it's bare, so you need to develop it. You might write custom code in some instances, but in other instances, you just need to change the settings. And that's a whole different conversation. And so the business analyst would typically be involved in some of these activities, like helping to select the vendor and the software, converting those needs into requirements, and collaborating with external consultants and specialists, facilitating conversations. So these are all things that the business analyst is called to do, mobilizing the team. Now, assume that the software has been developed. We're finished all of that. Let's test the software. Let's make sure that the software works as intended. At this stage, the ERP system has to go through an experiment, which is a control test. So the goal is to see how well the system performs as intended, using real-world examples from Pinecrest's employees. So everybody will send their scenarios. This is how I sell. This is how I buy. This is how I manufacture. And the project team would test those scenarios. And the entire technology stack needs to be ready. The stack means the ERP system doesn't function by itself. So you would probably need to send out emails from the ERP. You would need to print out things. You need to make sure that there's security. So all of those things need to be ironed out before the system is actually considered to be ready. Something very important to consider here is the MVS. So MVS, the minimum viable solution, stands for the point at which we all agree that, okay, the system is not fully developed, but we're ready to use it. So let me use the example of a house. When you buy a house brand new, most likely not everything is finished. Here in Canada, most times the basement is unfinished and the backyard. So you still buy the house anyways, and you still live in the house. Why? Because the minimum safety requirements have been met. And so the house is livable. You can live in the house. It's not going to compromise your safety and security. But we agree that the basement is not finished. So maybe the house is finished at 80%, but it's usable. The same with software. You cannot get to a point of 100% development. It doesn't exist. And a lot of companies fail at this stage because they expect perfection, but perfection doesn't exist. And so usually they would say, well, we're paying consultants, so they should do what we say. Well, the truth is that human minds change, our requirements change. And so because of that, you cannot really get to 100%. And so the business analyst has to help Pinecrest to agree on when is it that this software will be ready enough to use, but not 100% complete. That's the MVS, the minimum valuable or viable solution. So the business analyst does that, trying to achieve the MVS, enhancing employee knowledge. So by this time, the business analyst will be speaking with different employees to show them the system in progress and get feedback and try to see if they can improve their knowledge on the new system. The business analyst will be working with different professionals to see how to prepare the whole technology stack. Are the printers ready? Is the infrastructure ready? the network, and all of that. So those are some of the things that the business analyst would be doing. Testing. In some companies, you have somebody who does testing, like a test engineer or a quality analyst. But in other companies, the business analyst has to perform those tests against the requirements that have been collected initially. I want to take a quick pause. It's the top of the hour. We started our presentation about 7 minutes late. So I would go 7 minutes past the top of the hour so we can complete our presentation. So at this stage of experimentation, we're really testing the system. We're using the requirements, we're using the scenarios, and we're making sure that the system is up to task. Now, let's say we've agreed that, okay, we've not developed every single thing, not every single thing is configured, but it's good enough. If Pinecrest uses the solution as is at this point in time, it's going to be way better than the previous environment. It's going to be way better than what we had. And we would have time to adjust. And so once that determination has been made, we now move into rollout. So we need to roll out the software. Rolling out means that we're moving the software from being used only by the project team to everybody. And so the rollout phase is also very critical. It might seem like, well, it's just the last phase, but it's one of the most critical. So think about an airplane. When you're taking off, it's very critical. When you're landing, it's critical as well. And so this phase of the project feels like you're landing the plane. You need to go through checklists. There are a lot of things that we need to make sure that are in place because there's a chance that we may have forgotten certain things early on in the project, and now is the time to catch up on it before we actually turn on the solution or land the plane. Now, to be fair, the whole project is usually challenging and has interesting parts across, but you should be very mindful of the rollout as well. It's not the easy part. So this is where you actually start retiring the old systems, and there's a whole strategy there. Do we retire everything at once? Do we retire it in sequence? Those are decisions that the company has to make, facilitated by the business analyst. So at the launch or the rollout stage, typically you start having training, like formal training on the ERP system. The business analyst will be spearheading those training sessions. In some companies, the business analyst who has knowledge of the ERP system would actually be performing the training themselves. They will be retiring the old solutions, transitioning to the new one, elaborating software support procedures. How would people report when the software has a problem? Do we have a dedicated email? Does it work? Do we have levels of support? How fast do they respond? Is it 1 hour? Is it 2 hours? That's what we call service level agreements. And those things should have been agreed in advance, but the business analyst is making sure that those things are in place and they work. Revisiting business recovery procedures. For example, what if there's a hack and we don't have access to the internet? Can Pinecrest still do its transactions? All of those things need to be fine-tuned. You're not thinking about it at the launch stage. You must have done it already, but you're just making sure that they are there and ready to use. Of course, gathering feedback. So you've seen that we've gone from the project being initiated to the point where the project, the software is being, how many ERP has to be launched. So let's imagine that we've selected a date for launch. Today is Thursday. Let's say the product is going to be launched on Monday. That's the strategy that was decided. Everything has been checked. It's all good. And we launched the project, and that's it. So the project is, we launched the product, and that's it. The project is closed. The books are closed, the project manager has been retired, the resources have been withdrawn, and everybody has gone home happy. That doesn't usually happen like that, but for the sake of argument, let's say everybody goes home happy. The business analyst still has work to do. So beyond the project, the business analyst will be involved. I already mentioned one of the tasks, feedback collecting. So you need to collect feedback. People will be using the ERP system. People will be frustrated. Some will be neutral. Some will be very happy. You need to collect all of that feedback. You need to document it. You need to get insights, ideas. Some people will make suggestions. Why do we do this way? Why don't we do it that way? The business analyst has to have a lot of patience, big ears to listen effectively to everything that's being said. The business analyst has to participate in evaluating key results. Because remember, at the start of the project, we had some objectives and we set some tentative results. Now you'll be evaluating those key results. Do they make sense? Do we reevaluate them? And all of these would form the basis for new KPIs. So, and also the business analyst has to be on the lookout for market changes. So consider yourself on the watchtower, like you're in the lighthouse, and you're in the lighthouse, you're looking outside, but you're looking inside as well. And so that will be the role of the business analyst after the project. And all of this work done by the business analyst would go to feed new projects. So based on the ideas, based on the feedback, the management might decide to improve on the ERP system. And that might be a mini project. The management might decide to have additional systems to support the ERP. Maybe the sales team will say, well, it's so difficult for us to enter orders in the ERP. Let's get a CRM system. Maybe HR would say, well, I don't really have all of what I need to manage employee files. Let's get an HRIS system, and so on and so forth. And so all of this forms the basis for new projects and improvements down the road. And that's the project. We have implemented Harmony ERP across Pinecrest Furnishings Incorporated. Just a quick recap here. All of what we've talked about is captured on this one screen, from the time when we initiate the project right down to when the project is closed, and even beyond the project when we start monitoring the software. So overall, the business analyst is involved in so many activities. As you can see, this is not exhaustive, and every company might have a different, approach, but typically these are the activities that you would see the business analyst being involved in. And I would say involvement doesn't mean you're responsible for that activity. In some cases, you'll be responsible. In some cases, you'll be accountable. In some cases, they'll just consult you for an opinion. And in some other cases, you would just be informed, just for information. And so you're still involved, but at different capacities. Out there in the market, business analysts who have specialties in ERP implementation, they make a lot of money, typically above $100,000. And ERP consultants and specialists make even more. Some could go as much as 150, 180,000, depending on your level of your seniority. So it is a very interesting field to be in. And if it's something that you're considering, I encourage you. So the UDEL 360 looks like this in a nutshell. The big thing here is that as you're going through the process, you have iterations within each stage and between each stage. So there's a lot of movement there. And once you launch, it's not the end of the story. You get your learning, you get your innovation, and you feed into new projects to understand new realities. So we're constantly on the move as business analysts, and we're constantly innovating and creating change as agents of change. So that was the project, implementing Harmony Systems from start to finish, from understand to launch. using the UDEL, the Unified Digital Enablement Lifecycle. If you liked the presentation, if you're interested in pursuing a career in business analysis with a specialty in software implementation, or if you just want to specialize in software systems development, we offer training in that. We have 4 months training courses. LaCroix Institute of Technology is an endorsed education provider, endorsed by the IIBA. So our preparation helps you get your certifications, and those certifications help you earn more money down the road. We also have upcoming webinars twice every month for 1 hour, about 1 hour, and webinars are usually free. If you want to get more information about our webinars, kindly head to our website, or you can send us a message via the email address you see on the screen. If you also have a topic you would like us to talk about, be it on a podcast, we have a podcast called Now You Know It, or through just a one-on-one chat, you can send us your request by email, or you can head to our website and book a call, and we would be more than happy to assist you. I would take a pause here and see if we have any questions. I don't see any questions. Okay, I don't see any hands, no questions. It was a good day. I believe everything was clear. If there are questions, you can use the contact information we have there to send it over to us. Thank you for your time, and à la prochaine, as we say here in Quebec. See you in 2 weeks for our next set of webinars. Thank you very much, everyone.